What if I told you some of your favorite games were actually prequels and you didn't even realize it? They felt like sequels, they played like upgrades, but hidden beneath all that, these games were quietly taking you back in time, rewriting everything you thought you knew about their worlds. Today, we're diving into 10 games you probably didn't know were prequels, and trust me, once you see it, you'll never look at these franchises the same way again. At number 10, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. At first glance, it barely feels like a traditional Assassin's Creed game, and that's exactly why it stands out. Compared to Assassin's Creed 2 and Assassin's Creed 3, which focused on cities and parkour, Black Flag opens everything up to the sea. Naval gameplay isn't just a side feature anymore, it becomes the heart of the experience. You command your ship, engage in full-scale battles, hunt enemies, and explore freely. It's a huge step up from the limited naval sections before, offering more depth, freedom, and personality in every encounter. Exploration also expands dramatically. Instead of just urban environments, you get a vast Caribbean filled with islands, shipwrecks, and hidden locations. It's less about rushing missions and more about getting lost in the world. Then there's Edward Kenway. He's not driven by duty like past protagonists, he's a pirate chasing fortune. That shift gives the story a different tone, as his journey slowly evolves into something more meaningful. As a prequel, it adds depth to the entire timeline, showing the foundation of events that come later. And that's what makes Black Flag special. It doesn't just go backward, it expands what Assassin's Creed can be. Sometimes it's not about rooftops, it's about the open sea. At number 9, Batman Arkham Origins. This is Batman before the legend fully forms. More aggressive, more reckless, and far less controlled. Compared to Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City, Origins doesn't reinvent the formula, but it makes everything feel more intense and personal. Combat is still smooth, but it hits harder. Enemies are tougher, fights feel more brutal, and you're pushed to react faster and take risks a more experienced Batman wouldn't. It fits perfectly. This is a younger Bruce still figuring things out. Predator gameplay also evolves. Enemy setups are more complex, forcing you to plan ahead. With gadgets like the remote claw, you can set traps and control encounters in more creative ways, turning stealth into something more strategic. The detective system is a major step forward. Instead of just scanning clues, you reconstruct crime scenes, rewinding events and analyzing what happened. It leans deeper into Batman's identity as a detective, adding a layer the earlier games only hinted at. Boss fights stand out too, with unique assassins that turn encounters into skill-based duels rather than simple brawls. As a prequel, the story focuses on Batman himself. Gotham doesn't trust him yet. The police hunt him, criminals underestimate him, and even Alfred Pennyworth questions his path. You're watching him grow into the symbol he becomes, and that's what makes Origins work. It's not about a perfect hero, it's about becoming one. Rougher, darker, and more grounded, this is the Dark Knight before the myth. At number 8, Darksiders Genesis. This one surprises a lot of people because it doesn't just go back in time, it completely changes how the game plays. Compared to Darksiders and Darksiders 2, which focused on third-person action and exploration, Genesis shifts to a top-down, faster-paced style. It feels different at first, but it still captures the core of the series. The biggest change is the dual character system. You can switch between War and Strife at any time. War delivers heavy, close-range attacks, while Strife adds fast, ranged combat. That constant switching creates a smooth rhythm between power and speed. Combat overall is quicker and more fluid. Instead of slower, methodical fights, you're dealing with waves of enemies, chaining combos, and adapting on the fly. There's also more focus on upgrades and builds, giving you greater control over how you play. Level design changes too. Rather than one continuous world, the game is split into missions, more focused, but still packed with secrets, puzzles, and replay value. As a prequel, Genesis explores the early days of the Horsemen, before the events of the main games. You're seeing how this world was structured, its balance, its relationships, long before everything began to fall apart. The tone is slightly lighter, with more character interaction, but it still adds meaningful depth to the overall story. And that's what makes it stand out. It takes a risk with its gameplay, but uses that change to explore the past in a fresh way. Different style, same universe, and a deeper look at where it all began. At number 7, Deus Ex: Human Revolution. This is where the future begins, before it starts to fall apart. Set decades before Deus Ex, Human Revolution rebuilds the original's ideas with modern design while staying true to its core. The biggest evolution is player choice. Every situation can be approached your way. Stealth, combat, hacking, or social manipulation, and all of it connects. You're not just choosing a playstyle, you're shaping how the story unfolds. At the center of it all are augmentations. They're more than upgrades. They define how you interact with the world. You can move unseen, fight head-on, or talk your way through conflicts. Compared to the original, progression feels more refined and impactful in every moment. Level design also improves dramatically. Environments are built like layered puzzles, with multiple paths, hidden routes, and different solutions to every objective. It rewards exploration and makes each playthrough feel unique. Even smaller systems get expanded. Hacking is deeper, stealth is smoother, and dialogue choices carry real weight. As a prequel, this is where everything gains meaning. You're witnessing the rise of human augmentation, when the line between human and machine begins to blur. The world isn't broken yet, but you can feel it starting to crack, and that's what makes it so compelling. It doesn't just show a broken future, it shows the moment it begins to break. At number 6, Devil May Cry 3: Dante's Awakening. Despite the 3 in the title, this is where everything truly begins. Compared to Devil May Cry and Devil May Cry 2, this game doesn't just improve the formula, it defines it. The biggest leap is the combat system. Devil May Cry 3 introduces styles, letting you choose how you fight. Trickster for mobility, Royal Guard for defense, or Swordmaster and Gunslinger for pure offense. It turns combat into a personal expression of skill. And the depth is massive. You can chain combos, cancel animations, juggle enemies, and switch weapons seamlessly. Compared to earlier entries, everything is faster, smoother, and far more rewarding as you improve. Enemy design also steps up. Fights are harder and more demanding, pushing you to actually learn mechanics instead of just attacking blindly. But it always feels fair, and every win feels earned. Then there's Dante. You see a younger, cockier version of him, reckless, confident, and still finding his identity. It adds a lot of personality to the journey. And as a prequel, it hits even harder. This is the origin of Dante, and more importantly, the foundation of his rivalry with Virgil. It's not just about power, but ideology and identity. That context changes everything that comes after. That's what makes Devil May Cry 3 iconic. It doesn't just go back to the beginning, it perfects it. At number 5, Gears of War Judgment. This is the war before the war you remember. Raw, chaotic, and just beginning to spiral out of control. Set before the original Gears of War, Judgment shifts focus away from Marcus Phoenix and puts you in the boots of Damon Baird, showing the early days of the Locust War from a new perspective. The biggest change is the gameplay. Compared to earlier Gears games, combat is much faster and more aggressive. Instead of slow, heavy cover shooting, you're constantly moving, reacting, and adapting. Everything feels more immediate and arcade-like. The campaign structure also changes. Missions are framed as testimonies, giving each chapter a story within a story feel. It keeps the pacing tight and allows for more varied objectives. Then there's the declassified system. Before missions, you can choose to activate modifiers that make fights harder, like reduced visibility or stronger enemies. It increases challenge but also rewards you more for taking risks. Enemies themselves are more aggressive too. The Locusts don't just defend positions, they push, flank, and pressure you constantly, making every encounter feel more intense. As a prequel, it fills in the early chaos of the invasion. Humanity is still reacting, still unprepared, and everything feels unstable. And through Baird, you see a younger, less hardened soldier trying to survive it all. That's what makes Judgment stand out. It doesn't just show the war, it shows the moment everything starts to fall apart.
At number 4, God of War Ascension. This is Kratos at his lowest point, broken, angry, and barely holding himself together. Set before the original God of War, Ascension takes place right after his tragedy, showing a much more vulnerable version of Kratos before he became the Ghost of Sparta. Compared to God of War 2 and God of War 3, combat feels more focused. Instead of constantly switching weapons, the game centers around the blades of chaos with elemental powers like fire, ice, and lightning that change how battles play out. Enemies are also more aggressive, forcing you to think more about timing, positioning, and crowd control instead of pure offense. Puzzle design gets expanded too. The game introduces larger environmental mechanics like shifting structures and time manipulation, adding more cinematic scale to the experience. And that cinematic approach carries into the story. Gameplay and narrative flow together more smoothly, making the journey feel continuous and immersive. But as a prequel, the real focus is Kratos himself. You're not playing the unstoppable warrior from later games. You're seeing the man right after everything falls apart. His rage is still there, but now it feels more personal, more tragic. And that's what makes Ascension interesting. It doesn't just show Kratos before he became a legend, it shows the moment he started losing himself. At number 3, Halo Reach. This is a prequel that hits hard, not because of surprises, but because you already know what's coming. Set before Halo Combat Evolved, Reach shifts focus away from a lone hero and puts you in the role of Noble 6, fighting alongside a squad during a losing battle. Gameplay evolves the Halo formula in meaningful ways. The biggest addition is armor abilities, jetpacks, sprint, camouflage, and armor lock, which become part of your loadout and give combat more flexibility and personalization. Combat also feels more grounded. Weapons have more weight, enemies react more dynamically, and the AI constantly pressures you to move and adapt. Combined with larger battles, vehicles, and air combat, the war feels bigger and more intense than ever before. But the tone is what really stands out. Unlike earlier Halo games that focused on heroism, Reach feels somber and desperate. It's not about saving the day, it's about holding the line as everything slowly falls apart. And as a prequel, that's exactly why it works. The tension comes from knowing the outcome and fighting anyway. That sense of inevitability gives every mission emotional weight and makes the original Halo feel even more meaningful afterward. At number 2, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Even though it's called 3, this is where the entire Metal Gear story begins. Set decades before Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater trades high-tech facilities for dense jungles, forcing you to survive using whatever resources you can find. That shift completely changes the gameplay. Stealth becomes far more dynamic thanks to the camouflage system, which lets you blend into different environments by matching your surroundings. Instead of simply hiding, you have to think about visibility, terrain, and enemy awareness. The game also introduces survival mechanics. You hunt for food, manage stamina, and treat injuries, adding a layer of realism and tension that previous entries never had. Combat is slower and more tactical too, rewarding patience and planning over direct action. As a prequel, the story is just as important. This is the origin of Big Boss, showing the events that shape one of gaming's most important characters. It gives new meaning to the entire series and adds context to stories that come later. And that's what makes Snake Eater special. It doesn't just tell an earlier chapter, it lays the foundation for everything that follows. And at number 1, Red Dead Redemption 2. This isn't just a prequel, it completely redefines everything that came before it. Set years before Red Dead Redemption, the game puts you in the boots of Arthur Morgan, and his story changes how you see the entire series. Compared to the original, the gameplay is far more immersive. The world feels alive with dynamic weather, random encounters, realistic animations, and countless ways to interact with people and the environment. The survival systems add even more depth. You manage Arthur's health and stamina, maintain weapons, care for your horse, and make choices that influence how others see you. Everything feels more grounded and meaningful. Combat is slower and more tactical too, making every gunfight feel intense and believable. But what truly makes the game special is its story. As a prequel, it shows the Van der Linde gang before the events of the first game, giving you a deeper understanding, the relationships, loyalties, and conflict that shape the entire franchise. And through Arthur's journey, moments from the original game gain far more emotional weight. That's why Red Dead Redemption 2 is number 1. It doesn't just explain the past, it changes how you feel about the future. Sometimes the best stories aren't about what happens next. They're about understanding what came before. So which prequel surprised you the most? Did any of these change how you see your favorite game? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves gaming as much as you do.